on Sky News Australia. This is the Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, a massive program. We've got a stellar lineup of guests, including the great Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire. He'll tell us how the Americans are seeing Australia's free speech fight. Professor Ian Plimer unpacks the latest climate claims from Chris Bowen. And Canadian children's rights campaigner Billboard Chris is in the studio. He's been out and about in Melbourne and he's met some angry lefties. And talking about lefties and losing it, we feature tonight a Hollywood star, Drew Barrymore, and the Veep, Kamala. Or should that be Mamala?
We need you to be Mamala of the country.
I'm sorry, I should have given you a cringe warning before that footage. It's weapon grade cringe right there. Let's bring in Sophie Ellsworth, the media writer for The Australian. That is something else, isn't it? Even Kamala looked embarrassed by that footage. But let's start with something a little bit more serious. Activist and Macquarie University academic Randa Abdel Fattah has hit back at criticism of her by the nation's peak Jewish body. She's saying those claims are frankly defamatory and racist, and she has defended some activism she was involved in, involving little kids chanting for intifada at the University of Sydney, saying it gave the kids a sense of agency. Let's have a look at that protest.
Intifada, Intifada, Intifada. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. 5, 6, 7, 8, Israel is a terrorist state.
It's hard to see from that footage, but Dr. Abdel Fattah is there clapping along. Does this give kids a sense of agency, Sophie? Do they have any idea what they're even chanting for, Intifada?
Well, Rita, the reporting I've read is that some of the children are aged under 10. So I highly doubt they know what they're even saying. This is really serious stuff when you've got young kids saying, you know, pretty serious things, chanting things that they don't actually understand. And I think this is very bad for the university and all involved who actually think this is okay.
Well, she's defending it very strongly. There's no backward step being taken here. And Dr. Abdel Fattah also said this about the protesters and the children. She said, we spoke about Aboriginal sovereignty. We spoke about finding the courage to stand up for a better world. So, Sophie, this indoctrination is going in several directions. It's not just about the Middle Eastern conflict. As anyone who's taken note of these protests around the country, there is a strong element and crossover with some Aboriginal activists. They see some commonality in their cause.
Well, Rita, it is a worry when children this young are being taught this type of thing. You know, they are very young minds and, you know, teaching them this stuff can lead to issues, you know, further down in the way that they are raised. They may have these views because they're being told that they're acceptable from a young age. Let them learn, let them create their own views, but don't indoctrinate them at such a young age.
But they are getting that indoctrination, that sense of loathing for the country already. I mean, that is far more widespread, and that's, to me, an extreme example of, you know, little kids chanting for intifada. But go to any preschool even, let alone primary school, and you will see so much, anti-Australian sentiment as part of the curriculum. Now to the brutal bashing and robbing of a Perth grandmother, allegedly at the hands of a recently released immigration detainee. This is making headlines across the country and for good reason. Here's some of the injuries Nanette Simmons sustained. The pictures are disturbing, Sophie. This is a disaster also for the Albanese government. The Australian reports that the Kuwaiti-born Majid Jamshidi Duakshan, who received bail in February for breaching curfew orders, was bailed 2 days before this alleged attack last week over a range of serious offences. it's before the court, so we will not pass any judgment on guilt or innocence there. But to the broader issue here, the Albanese government seems unable or unwilling to meaningfully deal with this situation. The ministers seem to be out of their depth in a serious way. I mean, what is happening with things like preventative detention orders?
Well, Rita, as you're right, let's let the legal case play out in the courts. But that poor grandmother, whatever happened there is clearly wrong, and something is broken in our system if a grandmother in her home is being attacked like that. Really frightening. And I'd also ask at this point, where are the ministers in relation to these detainees? Where are they coming out and speaking to the public about this issue that we are being faced in Australia and that people are very concerned about?
Well, rightfully so. And I think the Prime Minister has to take action here and step in, do a reshuffle, bring in some new talent who's capable of dealing with those key portfolios, because these two ministers, they are just both, they are not up to it. They've made that evident really for months now. They have not been up to it. The fallout from Anthony Albanese's apparent snubbing of a 23-year-old woman's safety activist is still ongoing, with the woman not backing down from her claims the Prime Minister is a liar. Sarah Williams felt her experience as a sexual assault survivor had been diminished when the Prime Minister used a microphone at a rally against domestic violence to accuse the organisers of previously not allowing him to speak. New footage from the ABC shows what happened just before he took the mic. Watch for a frustrated PM telling the rally organisers he should be allowed to speak because he is the Prime Minister.
I'm happy to know what we were intending to talk with the ministers, hear what they have to say, and then we'll consider the decision of them speaking about 10 minutes. But I'm not having any attacks towards myself in the organisation. Speaking or not speaking?
Sophia, tell us what's actually happened here. There's a lot of confusion about who said what. Is the Prime Minister lying? Is he telling the truth? There's a lot of pressure on this activist, Sarah Williams, to make up with the Prime Minister. There's a lot from the left pressuring her not to damage him any further with accusations of lying, and some in the media are also pressuring her.
Well, Rita, I would say this is basically a PR disaster. He's standing there. She's asking the crowd, should he speak? He's saying, I was never asked to speak. This is just now, he's been questioned about it because she's called him a liar. He's not answering the questions. Rita, this is the situation politicians get themselves into when they're in a situation they can't control. I would argue that was not wise for Mr Albanese to be there when he's not controlling the messaging, because this is now dominating news headlines and it's made him look really bad. There you've got a woman who is crying in front of politicians who are supposedly meant to be standing up for women, and they're not even consoling her. This was just a train wreck.
Well, that was, I think, the worst of it. When she reacted emotionally, one can understand. It would be a pretty sort of a harrowing experience being there. And she was weeping, and he looked right over, probably as close as we are, and then continued. So I know there's a lot of people judging him harshly because of that. As I said yesterday, I think it's a really difficult situation. I think you're not sure what to do, and whether you persevere with what you're saying or you provide some comfort.
For Senator Katie Gallagher. Like, what was she doing as well? I thought she's meant to be standing up for women. She's a big advocate for women. She wasn't consoling Sarah Williams either.
Some women, some other women may disagree with you very strongly there. Now, let's talk a little bit about Brittany Higgins and her fiancé David Shiraz's case in the West Australian Supreme Court. They want to delay to the trial date for their defamation battle with former Liberal Cabinet Minister Linda Reynolds. The Australian reports Reynolds is going to oppose this delay request. She doesn't want this to drag into 2025. Sophia, what are the reasons for Higgins and Shiraz seeking a delay, and I mean, this probably is going to drag into 2025.
Well, from all the reporting I've read, Rita, they haven't gone into explicit detail of why they want it delayed. But Linda Reynolds is concerned that if it is delayed, it will push it out to 2025. And she doesn't want this to drag on. She wants this dealt with. This whole scenario has gone on for far too long in the media, in my view. There's been so many people damaged by it, and Linda Reynolds wants her day in court. And, that's her right to take them to court and defend her name. So it'll be very interesting to see if it is delayed, but Linda Reynolds is not backing down, and Brittany Higgins has apologised to Linda Reynolds on social media. But, Rita, I think it's a little too late.
Yes, and I don't think that apology was perhaps as fulsome as Linda Reynolds wanted. I don't know if an apology is going to do it now, but this case, that a lot of money is already being spent, from what I understand, on some very high-powered lawyers. So we're probably going to go to a trial. Sophie Ellsworth, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rita.
Joining me now is esteemed geologist Professor Ian Plimer. Let's start with a claim by Energy Minister Chris Bowen that the Nationals are calling completely bogus. He retweeted an article from the far-left publication, the Saturday paper, where they claimed that the coalition was fracturing on nuclear energy. A senior Liberal source told the paper, basically, it's the Nats that have pushed this nuclear thing, but now they're running away from it at 1,000 miles an hour because they don't want it in their seats, and the poor old regional libs aren't going to cop it. Senior Liberal source? I wonder who that could be. Surely the Nats would prefer to have, I don't know, these small nuclear reactors rather than thousands of acres destroyed with ugly solar farms and wind turbines? Or is this genuine? You're in the regions all the time, Ian. Are the Nationals fracturing on nuclear?
No, they're not. The Nationals represent the farmers and the people in rural Australia, and these people are having their land destroyed by solar and wind industrial complexes. The Nationals are very united about having to destroy the farmland to save the farmland. And people in the rural areas of Australia are absolutely sick and tired of being taken for granted by the cities by having their land destroyed. The end result will be food security problems in Australia. But that's a long way down the track, and that doesn't matter for the ideology. We're just kicking the problems down the road.
Now, speaking of fantasies, here's Chris Bowen believing that using our taxes to cut carbon emissions is just going to create all these well-paying jobs.
$300 million across 9 facilities right across Australia. I'm in Tasmania, where we're helping Cement Australia reduce their emissions at a facility they've been operating for more than 100 years. Lots of jobs to be created, lots of emissions to be reduced. Australia's got a great industrial future with a future made in Australia, and we're going to reduce emissions as we do so.
These jobs he speaks of, Ian, are they long-term jobs, commercially viable, well-paying, or is this just going to be short-term jobs that are really due to the taxpayer largesse? We're just propping up a sector that needs subsidies to survive.
Well, Chris Bowen must have tied our economy to that of Mars, because in every Western economy, we see that as soon as we put in solar and wind to replace reliable nuclear, reliable coal and reliable gas, then we lose jobs. Then costs go up. And we know that for every solar and wind job in the UK, they're subsidised to the tune of hundreds of thousands of pounds. So he must be on another planet. He can't be on planet Earth, because we've got numerous examples all over the place to show that he's demonstrably wrong.
Now to the US, where Joe Biden is launching something called the American Climate Corps.
I'm Joe Biden.
I'm Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I'm Ed Markey.
We're here to share some exciting news with you. Americans can now apply to join the American Climate Corps.
Those who become American Climate Corps members will get paid to fight the impacts of climate change while learning the skills to be part of tomorrow's clean energy and climate resilience workforce.
Right now, we're recruiting for more than 2,000 positions located all across the country. To apply for an American Climate Corps job, visit climatecorps.gov.
We're counting on you.
2,000 climate activists paid for by the taxpayer. I'm scared we've just given Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese all bunch of new ideas, Ian. What are this lot going to achieve?
Well, these are BS jobs. These are creating jobs for people who are totally and absolutely unemployable and useless. They probably did political science degrees at some of the universities where we see these big demonstrations going on at present. A climate corps sounds like what we saw in Cambodia in Pol Pot's time, or what we saw in Mao Zedong's time in China, with younger people going around, beating others around the head, saying, this is the truth. These jobs are being created by your taxes. These jobs are being created by people who are eminently unemployable and uneducated. And I think President Biden is really showing his true colours.
Oh, he is there, and there's lots of media conjecture at the moment about what a Trump is going to do if we do have a second Trump term, what he will do with US energy policy once he's in office. And I've got to say, the plans look quite good to me. More oil and gas permits, aggressive deregulation, federal career staff relegated to the sidelines. I can't see any problems with any of that, Ian.
No, well, he's doing what he said he'd do when he was president before, that's drain the swamp. But I don't think he realised how boggy the swamp was and how difficult it was to do. He has learned. And he has to come in like Alexander the Great with a sword and cut the Gordian knot. There are hundreds of thousands of jobs in the Western countries of people actually stopping business making a profit, using climate policy to destroy people's livelihoods. And Trump has said, no, that's enough. I'm going to actually have a vibrant US. The US is a huge energy producer. It has a lot of coal, it has a lot of gas, it has a lot of oil, and they have even more by fracking. And if President Trump becomes the sitting president again, I am absolutely sure he will come in with an axe and clean out those people who are destroying taxpayers' wealth and who are killing off small business.
Now, let's go to the UK quickly. Their Energy Secretary is warning that net zero policies could crush British businesses. The UK's target of reaching net zero has been in law since Theresa May was Prime Minister, and they want to get to net zero by 2050. But the Telegraph reports that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing increasing calls to dramatically water down or even abandon these green policies. And these calls are coming from his Tory backbenchers. They fear these policies are going to cost the party support of the general election. No kidding on Einstein. It's incredible it's taken this long for the Tories to understand the damage net zero is doing to their country.
Well, it's too late. They're gone. They'll lose government. And as soon as a politician says the words net zero, you know that politician is heading for extinction. The community is not stupid. The community knows that net zero is costing a fortune and will cost them even more. The community knows that their electricity bills have gone up. And every time we put in a new wind turbine or a new solar panel, then the costs go up. We have abandoned grid systems and cheap, reliable electricity to put in unreliable electricity and called this the path to net zero. So if you, as a politician, want to get kicked out as an election, then stick with the policy net zero. And the quicker the Conservative Party get away from this, then the better it is, because then they have a chance of survival.
Professor Ian Plimer, thank you so much for your time this evening. And still to come, which left-wing billionaire is bankrolling college protesters in the US? The Daily Wire's Michael Knowles joins me next. Plus, we've got a super edition of Lefties Losing It. Welcome back to the Rita Panahi Show. It's time for Lefties Losing It. And I'm sorry, but I'm about to bring you a cringe fest, unlike anything you have seen before. I'm warning you now. Look away because you might feel a little bit queasy after this. Here is actress and TV host Drew Barrymore with the Vice President.
Been thinking that we really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now. But in our country, we need you to be mamala of the country.
We need you to be mamala of the country. That was too much cringe even for cringe queen Kamala. Gosh, even she felt uncomfortable. Good Lord. And they say Hollywood types are out of touch. And just how will Kamala be mamala of the country? By ignoring her duties as the borders are, big tick there, by being the most wildly unpopular Veep of all time, and the most incompetent, tick, tick, tick there. But the Vice President seems to think criticism of her, including of her incessant and often ill-timed giggling and laughing, is all due to sexism, of course.
Right?
Good times. Now, I love a story with a happy ending, and watch this New Yorker have a FAFO moment in the great state of Florida. See this lefty losing it, so a Let's Go Brandon sticker on a car, and being the unhinged liberal loser that he is, he decided to vandalise that car. Watch what happens next.
To the green Toyota Tundra, it was not raining.
Okay, I don't recall. Yeah, I thought it was raining, but...
Okay, the green Toyota Tundra pickup truck that you walked up to, you don't remember what you did?
I walked by a truck, yeah.
Okay, what did you do to it?
I scratched it.
Why? Was it the bumper sticker? Because they've got a ton of security footage there, man.
Okay, so
I see you walking behind it, and you look over at it, and she's got a sticker that says, "Let's go Brandon" or something.
Yeah, I guess it infuriated me.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Was that it? That's the only reason you did it? You don't know who owns the truck or anything?
Yeah, that's the only reason I did it. And it's stupid to do, but this whole...
Okay, so, Mr. Brothers, here's the unfortunate news. She wants to press charges, so I have to take you to jail, sir, so that you should turn around. Put your hands behind your back.
Just consider what an entitled far-left miscreant you'd have to be to see a sticker on some stranger's car you don't like and to be seen infuriated, I think that's the word you used, that you turn yourself into a criminal. Lesson there is, don't try New York nonsense in Florida. Now to another Democrat losing it, and he is supposed to be one of the occasionally sane lefties, James Carville, but he's decided to film himself having this mad rant about a second Trump term.
If they get a hold, there will be no government left, there will be no rights left, you'll live under theocracy, you'll end up with Christian nationalism, but that's all right, you little 26-year-old. You don't feel like the election's important to me. They're not addressing the issues that I care about.
Yes, they'll get the young'uns out there voting for your corpse candidate. Well done, James. Well, the Democrats can count on the support of the college campus writers and professors. There ain't no Republicans in that lot. And yesterday, in Lefties Losing It, we brought you footage of professors involved in these lawless protests being led away in handcuffs. But don't think that's going to deter academics. Have a look at these members of faculty linking arms and forming a human barrier to protect the Jewish students? No, of course not. To protect folk who want to attend class? No, don't be silly. They are protecting what is called the Gaza Solidarity Encampment. That was in New York. Let's go to California to watch another academic not be arrested but have a almighty meltdown. She's infuriated by a student who's peacefully holding an Israeli flag as a show of support to Jewish students. This is something else.
This is a professor here at UCLA University.
Yes, I am, and I'm talking about the truth. It's a genocide.
What's your name?
What's your problem?
You clearly don't know what the definition of a genocide is.
I don't know.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, then why has the Palestinian population number only been increasing since 1948? Genuine question. How is that a genocide if the population has only been increasing?
Who can help me here? answer this question. Can you help me?
So she's happy to wave her arms around and scream about genocide, but when the student makes the very pertinent point that the Palestinian population has increased significantly, she has no response. This academic is being schooled by a student.
Kids that are getting died at massive graves, do they have a choice? They have a choice? Do they have a choice to get born there?
Professor at UCLA, everybody.
Yes, I am a professor and I'm asking
This is
that
the kind
they
of
don't have a
school.
choice. What she's talking about? They don't have a choice, the kids that died when
The only people that are oppressing the Palestinian people are Hamas, the terrorist organization.
You want to provoke the people here with not a good reason.
Do I look like I'm provoking?
Yes, you can't fear to provoke them. That's what you're doing.
They're spreading fear.
They're not spreading fear.
They're spreading
They're trying to
hatred.
protect the innocent kids that they're being born. It's bad for you. It's just reactionary.
I'm here to show Jewish students that we do not need to be afraid.
Help them. You should be with them, as other Jewish people have been, because they recognize what kind of atrocities being committed.
What kind of atrocities are being committed?
The kids are already getting killed.
By Hamas terrorists.
By Hamas terrorists, by Netanyahu and Biden. Jeez. Hamas brainwashed. Should all people be in this world?
Oh dear, you save up and sacrifice so your kids can be taught by these people. One quick last one from UCLA. One of these numbnuts posted this outrageous claim about the few pro-Israel protesters who are on campus in a counter-protest. She wrote, there was a protester in the liberated zone at UCLA with a potentially fatal banana allergy. Counter-protesters invaded the encampment and saw all the no banana warnings. The next day, they came back waving bananas like settlers waving machine guns and smeared bananas everywhere. I'm sure that didn't actually happen. Let's have a look at this banana crime. Yes, that's a harrowing incident indeed. She's just eating a banana and dancing. People could die. Really, just like a settler waving a machine gun. Can you believe these overgrown toddlers have signs around their illegal encampment with banana warnings? My God. Now, more lefties losing it, and they don't come any more powerful and some would say dishonourable than this billionaire. The New York Post reports George Soros and his hard-left minions are funding many of the agitators who are fueling the explosion of radical anti-Israel protests at college campuses across America. Joining me now is the Daily Wire's Michael Knowles. Michael, is George Soros the most impactful activist in the US?
He's certainly the most visible leftist activist, and he has disproportionate influence not only because of all the money that he invests in tearing our country down and advancing leftism, but because he's very smart and he's very clever at it. So while everyone is paying attention to the presidential race, for instance, Soros is investing money in lower-level races, notably in the DAs, who then let criminals off of the hook and turn our cities into chaos. And his influence has been the stuff of legends. I mean, truly, it will be studied for decades to come. And now you're seeing the latest episode of this in that the Soros network is funding the anti-Israel and downright anti-Jewish protests all over the Ivy League and other university campuses, which I think throws a wrench in some of the machinations of the protesters, because if their argument is that the state of Israel and the Jews broadly are, controlling the world and perpetrating all manner of evil, they'll probably have to explain why they themselves are receiving a paycheck rather from one of the most prominent Jews on earth.
Now, President Biden has been characteristically weak and incoherent with his approach on this issue. Let's have a listen to what he's had to say.
Do you condemn the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses?
I condemn the anti-Semitic protests. That's why I've set up a program to deal with that. I also condemn those who don't understand what's going on with the Palestinians and how they're being.
Should the Columbia University president resign?
Right this way. I didn't know that. I'll have to find out more about it.
Should he resign?
hard to figure out what he's saying. I think he said he also condemns those who don't know about the plight of Palestinians. And he'll find out more about what's happening at Columbia University. Michael, here is a treat, a blast from the past. Contrast Biden's inept performance with the great Ronald Reagan.
Those people told you for days in advance that if the university sought to go ahead with that construction, they were going to physically destroy the university. Now, why did you
negotiate many times?
Negotiate? What is to negotiate? What is? What
University is a public institution.
That's right.
Important
but the university,
for its own community and for the community of Berkeley that live around it.
All of it began the first time some of you who know better and are old enough to know better let young people think that they had the right to choose the laws they would obey as long as they were doing it in the name of social protest.
Now, that's how you deal with trouble at university campuses. That is a president with moral clarity, full control of his faculties. Quite a contrast there, Michael.
I think so. The only thing that Ronald Reagan and Joe Biden had in common is they were both relatively elderly presidents. The problem is that mentally and spiritually, Ronald Reagan was always a vigorous young man and a fighter, and Joe Biden seems to be 150 years old and seems to be confusing all the various U.S. grand strategies from that period, probably going back to the colonial days. This is the fundamental problem with the Biden strategy. When he says, I condemn both sides, I support both sides, I'm a friend to all and a friend to none. Well, what is that going to get you? In real dollars and cents terms, Joe Biden has funded both sides of the conflict. With one hand, he gives money to the state of Israel. With another hand, he gives money to Iran. And so when Iran attacked the state of Israel the other day, Joe Biden could claim credit for funding all of the missiles and the anti-missile defenses there. Not a very smart policy, but he has no idea where he's going. And so when President Trump comes in and points to Joe Biden and points to his many failures, Donald Trump can say with a lot of credibility that if he were president, none of this would be happening, because President Trump was already the president, and during that time, mirabile dictu, amazing to say, he brought peace to the Middle East, he signed the Abraham Accords, Vladimir Putin stopped invading countries for the first time in 20 years, even Kim Jong-un started playing ball with the United States, and in just a short period of less than 4 years, Joe Biden has been able to wreak all sorts of havoc and undo so many of those great accomplishments. It would be impressive if it weren't so sad.
It would be impressive if it wasn't such a tragedy for the country and for the world. We've learnt a lot about the Biden family's dodgy business dealings, but a lot of the focus is on Hunter Biden, understandably so, the president's coke-addled whore enthusiast son. But it is Joe Biden, I've always argued, who is the product. He's the product the family is selling. It's his access, his influence, his name that has real market value. And the New York Post reports today that James Biden, the president's brother, made a flawless pitch for Qatar to invest $30 million in a troubled rural health provider. And he listed brother of Joe Biden as one of his credentials. They're not even being subtle about it, Michael.
I think Hunter Biden himself admitted this some years ago. He said, my last name is always going to be an entree into business. It's always going to have something to do with my success. I don't think that when Hunter Biden was sitting on the board of Burisma, it was because of his expertise in natural gas or Ukrainian politics. Something tells me it's because his father was the vice president and the point man. So this has been true not just for Hunter, but also for Joe Biden's brothers. It's a firm, it's a family firm, because Joe Biden, even Joe Biden, who's the leader of the pack, was never the brightest bulb in the pack. He had a pretty dismal academic record that he then lied about, which is why he had to drop out of the 1988 presidential race. But the man is dogged. He's determined, if nothing else. So he became president some decades later. And it's the only way that the Biden family's been able to make a lot of money. As you point out in your beautiful Australian diction, they have some expensive tastes notably for the booger sugar and for ladies of the night. So they kept the money flowing, and now, only decades later, is it causing political headaches for Joe Biden, who probably will never face any legal or even political consequences for it.
Let's talk about billionaire Elon Musk and his battle with the Australian government. He wants them to stop censoring posts on his site X. We've got an eSafety commissioner in this country who's a leftist activist, appointed by a conservative government, but never mind, a leftist activist. And she wants what she considers harmful posts banned, not just in Australia. She wants them banned worldwide. This is making news in the US. What's the reaction there, Michael? How is Australia being perceived?
This was a story that I first blew the whistle on over a year ago, and a lot of people didn't pay attention at the time. In fact, Rita, you were one of the few people that was paying attention to this story at the time, probably because you had a little bit more insight generally, and you were so close to the epicenter of this major shockwave in global communication. This American who worked at Twitter in the pre-Elon days, who was constantly trying to have big tech censor independent voices, made it all the way over to your country, and from her position in the government, teamed up with the World Economic Forum and tried to implement new censorship. So one might say that a country has a right to install whatever kind of censorship regime it wants. We have probably more of a free speech tradition in the United States, but other countries do their own thing. Where the problems begin is when those countries and those international, unaccountable, liberal, globalist institutions like the World Economic Forum want to start censoring everybody else's country. And that is exactly what the eSafety Commissioner in Australia, Julie Grant, as well as other members of the Australian government, all the way up to and including the Prime Minister, I'm sorry to say a man with an Italian last name, Albanese, even he is trying to push this kind of stuff. And so they're trying to fine people $500,000 a day. They're trying to fine X for reporting on the stabbing in Sydney, the mall stabbing, and then the stabbing of the Ancient Church of the East Bishop. They're trying to shut down independent global magazines like Redux, which is not an Australian publication. It's an international publication. It has writers in the United States for reporting on stories that are of public interest, trying to shut down independent journalists for reporting on stories of, for instance, a trans-identifying radical activist who has published all sorts of obscene and downright criminal material, now sitting on a UN panel to determine gender-affirming care. This is obviously a matter of public interest, but I think that the liberal globalists know that the people don't like this stuff. They don't like this being forced down their throats. They don't like not having any say or any vote in it. And so the answer is that they're going to censor everybody, no matter the jurisdiction and no matter national borders.
And that's the point Elon Musk made, that if you've got one government deciding a piece of footage is banned everywhere else in the world, then you can have any despot, third world corrupt country making a ruling like that, and we'd all have to abide by it. It is just absurd on the face of it, but they're pursuing it. It's before the courts. Michael, it's even worse than what you've just described. Those cases are there, but she's even taken down in this country, the posts are still available elsewhere, posts from breastfeeding advocates saying things like men can't breastfeed. Somehow that's damaging and dangerous and needs to be eliminated from X. It's astonishing. I'm glad you're all over the story. You were the first to break it a year ago. Michael Knowles, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be with you.
Still to come, the man trying to take down our eSafety Commissioner, Billboard Chris, joins me on the desk. And he'll also tell me how many lefty Melburnians abused him over the weekend at Federation Square. That's after this. Welcome back. My next guest made a name for himself by standing up to gender ideology and the use of puberty blockers on children. by wearing a billboard around his neck and inviting people to debate him. He recently did that right here in Melbourne at Federation Square. Take a look at how it went.
I'm sitting here having conversations. What's the problem?
You're not having conversations.
Well, you don't think I'm allowed to have conversations here? Why not?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. But you know that conversation is a moot point.
What's this got to do with that?
Today.
What's this got to do with that?
No. All I'm telling you is you're looking for problems. That's why you're here.
I'm here to have conversations. I came here from Canada just to talk.
You're not welcome
Just to talk to you.
Go back to Canada.
I'm not going anywhere. I love Melbourne. Great city.
Welcome to Melbourne. Go back to Canada. Chris Elston, also known as Billboard Chris, joins me now. How did you find the good people of Melbourne? Were they all as charming and rational as that lot?
Well, I do love Melbourne, and I'm actually getting a lot of support, but there was a women's rights rally against domestic violence going on.
On the weekend, yes.
And for some reason, a lot of the women that attended that rally think I'm the bad guy because I have this opinion that we shouldn't be maiming and sterilizing children. It really doesn't make sense.
It is a weird sort of conclusion to make that you're the enemy, because your cause is very different to what was being protested about. You are all about what you say is the protection of children, to stop children being medically particularly transitioned as under 18 and not equipped to make those sort of decisions. Did you know that anti-violence rally was happening in Melbourne when you went out there? And were you surprised that some of these women didn't sort of appreciate that this issue does concern things like women's only spaces, including at women's shelters, and people have been fighting for that? And there seemed to be no appreciation of that with the women you encountered anyway.
No, I didn't know that was going on. I'd been at that same street corner the day before. I'm told that's where you go in Melbourne to have the best conversations. So I went back there, and I wasn't at their rally. It was a couple hundred yards away, but as they were filing out, they were walking by. And that included a man in a dress who says he's a woman, who they all supported very enthusiastically. I was somehow the bad guy. They're okay with him coming into their spaces, which really doesn't make sense.
Yeah, let's have a quick look at that.
Are you happy having this guy in your changing rooms and everything?
Sorry, what are your pronouns? Are you she? Yeah, so not a guy. I would never look at you and be like...
No, that is what we call a human male right there.
Now, it was interesting because as soon as you announce your pronouns and say she, her, then it's okay. You're allowed in women's only spaces. So some of the attitudes that you were encountering on the weekend. How does Melbourne rate compared to other cities you've gone to around the world? Because you've done this all across the world. Are we particularly left-leaning here? Are we do we remind you of any other cities in North America or elsewhere?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of my home city, Vancouver.
Ah.
It's very left-leaning. Just that day, 2 days ago, I would say I spoke with about 10 different individuals who identify as trans. That included one girl, 13 years old, who came to debate me. I didn't talk to her because I'm not there to talk to little kids.
Yeah.
She looked like she was probably 10 years old. Running around the city with 3 other friends on a Sunday, no parents present. She said to a woman that she was speaking to that she was wearing chest binders. And it just breaks my heart, because this is a little kid. It's just a little girl, and she's already this fiery social justice warrior, and she's been deceived into believing that she's really a boy. And this is going on everywhere. At the University of Melbourne today, I was just there for 2 hours in the morning. I talked with 4 trans-identified males. So it's going on a lot out there, and you can pretty much tell how woke a city is by the amount of colored hair that you see. And there's a whole lot of purple and blue and pink hair.
Green hair, yes. I saw some footage of you talking to people with all sorts of... I don't know if all of Melbourne and Victoria is like the centre of the city in Federation Square, so hopefully it's not that bad. Why do you do this? Tell me what motivates your activism, why you see this as a really important issue.
Well, I think there's no doubt that this is the greatest child abuse scandal in modern medicine history. There's no such thing as a child born wrong. We should never be teaching children that they're born in the wrong body. Nobody can define what that means. But I think it's extraordinarily abusive The positive message we should be sending is that they're perfect just as they are. They don't need drugs or scalpels to be their true selves. But they've come to believe that just because they're a little different, or they've got autism, as a lot of these kids do, or they've suffered abuse or trauma, and they're having a tough time in life, a lot of these kids have come to believe that gender is the source of all their problems. And of course it's not. When they go through these drugs and hormones and surgeries, all the existing problems they have in life still remain, but now we're turning them into lifelong pharmaceutical patients.
Well, do you feel vindicated by the number of countries now that are banning puberty blockers for minors? You've seen the NHS make that decision recently. Some of the things you've advocated for were described as extreme not long ago, but you've had medical authorities come around to that way of thinking, not in every country, certainly not in Australia yet. Do you feel vindicated by those developments in recent months?
Yeah, I mean, I've never had a shadow of doubt in my mind about what's right or wrong in this, and I've always had more than 90% support from the population. That one part of the city is for sure a bit more woke, but you know, we've had a lot of data for a long time. We have this new CAS review out of England, 388 pages long, a 3.5-year review, found this isn't helping children psychologically. Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, Germany, they've all come to the same conclusions.
Yeah.
Half the states in the US have legislated an end to this. So I knew it would just take time for the truth to get out there. But it's getting out there, and it's going to happen in Australia as well, because there's an avalanche of truth hitting these people, and no matter how hard they try to ignore it, when they're buried under it, they can't ignore it anymore.
Well, is Australia now a bit of an outlier? Because, as you've just mentioned, a bunch of countries have changed direction on this. Some have bans on these treatments for under 18s. Australia, we haven't even had a review. We have such a opposition to even reviewing what's happening at these gender clinics, even the ones at children's hospitals. And we are just following the so-called gender affirming model unquestioningly. Is Australia increasingly an outlier?
I would say so, yes. Canada as well. There is one province in Canada, in Alberta, they're now taking action. But I'm encouraged because a little while ago, there were only 1 or 2 politicians who would say anything. Now there are several. There are 6 or 7 who are meeting with me while I'm here. And I know there are other politicians who are going to be presenting new policies that they want to get done. I know in Western Australia, the Liberal leader wants to ban puberty blockers. So they're finally speaking up. And we have the evidence from these other countries now to back them up, which is really indisputable. People used to say, well, there's no evidence to support positions like mine, but that evidence keeps mounting and they can only ignore it for so long.
And it wasn't all criticism and people with purple hair yelling at you. You also had some support in the Melbourne CBD.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good, thank you. My name is Jamie.
Nice to meet you, Jamie.
Just came down to say hello and welcome to Melbourne. I'm very glad you came.
Thank you so much.
I am a supporter. I follow you on Twitter. And I was very pleased to hear that you were coming, so I just thought I'd come and say hello. This is my son, George.
Amazing. Hey, George. What's up?
I brought him down for a drive, and yeah, good on you, mate.
So you do have a lot of people around the world who are aware of what you do and who support you. How did you get this prominence? Is it through social media? How do people in Australia know who you are?
It's just persistence, really, Rita. That's all it is. When you take on a mission like this, you've just got to keep at it. You can't just do it for a week or a month. I've been at this for almost 4 years now. And yes, in the beginning, it started off really small, but I knew if I just kept at it, it would grow into something. And today, my videos often get seen more than 1 million times. The really viral ones will be more than 5 million even. And I think sometimes people attacking me and the assaults I've endured, that's brought in a lot of big new audiences because those videos go very viral. But I want to make it very clear that that doesn't represent reality. More than 90% of the time, I'm getting nothing but support and love, no matter where I go.
That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
Billboard Chris, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
That's it from me. Up next is News Night. I'll see you at 11 tomorrow. Good night.